Super. Thank you. So, we have this opportunity at all of our connects to stand up. So if you weren't ready today, you hadn't sort of worked on your pitch, please come to another one. Literally, I think we have 4 this week or 4 next week, and one Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week. So it's on different topics that entrepreneurs need to know about, all right? And because we are kicking off the I-Corps program today, and not everybody here is I-Corps, wanted to talk about agile innovation or lean startups, right? And wanted to give you a framework for how we think about approaching building startups here at Carnegie Mellon and the Swartz Center. Even before the lean startup term became popular, we worked together with Innovation Works, which is the Pennsylvania-backed seed fund, the most active seed fund by number of deals done in the world, or in the country, to put together just this sort of framework and methodology for thinking about how to approach it, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to give you an introduction and a background. I'm also going to have a video, it's about 10 minutes long, from Eric Ries, who actually coined the term a lean startup, and it was a conference that he spoke at out in California. We're not going to get to point 3 today just because of time, but we've done a lot of video interviews with entrepreneurs that did customer discovery very well and really nailed the lean startup process to get products that were just outstanding, right? Compellingly better than what was available and skyrocketed. So 4Moms is a company, specifically the Mamaroo product. Maybe some of you have heard of that product. Was a breakthrough product doing tens and tens of millions of dollars of sales on that product alone every year. And so if you get involved in the ecosystem here, you take classes or you come and talk to our EIRs like Will Kegler. Any other EIRs in the audience here today? Oh, great. So super. Entrepreneur in residence. These are folks that have been there, done that, been through the ringer. So they're here on campus to be able to help you along your pathway of building startups, right? Mentorship is a huge, important part of that, and we try to provide a bunch of that here. Okay, so I always like to sort of start things out by eliminating some myths that exist. And the first one is, what you talking about, Willis? Now, for many of you, you have no idea what this means. But there are some of you in the crowd that understand what this means. This is Gary Coleman. He was on a television show called Different Strokes, and it was a comedy, situation comedy. And anytime his brother or his adopted father said something he didn't believe about, Willis was there, his brother, what's you talking about, Willis? Like to sort of decry a myth, right? And so one of the myths about lean startups is that this is only for that lightweight BS Web 2.0 kind of companies, right? Sort of web apps, phone apps, this is the only place you can apply it. And it's just not true. You can apply this to life sciences. You can apply it to hardware development. In fact, this is the 2 founders of 4Moms. This is Rob Daly, who we interviewed. This is Henry Thorne, probably one of the most famous roboticists in the world. I can give you his history, but he was the co-founder. He actually has a new startup called Secure Seats that he works right out of that cube back there behind you. They used this lean methodology, this agile innovation methodology to create this company 4Moms, and it's a really cool story. Hannah Alexander and Matt Stanton did Soul Power. They won the Invention of the Year in Popular Science in 2014, where they put a piezoelectric sensor into the heel of their shoes, and as you walked, kinetic energy was turned into electrical energy and stored in a battery, right? They used this methodology to build that product. And famous Meredith. How many of you know Wiggle Whiskey? A few of you, right? So Meredith is a CMU alum, amazing person. She has created an experience company around a physical product in whiskey. If you haven't been down to Wiggle Whiskey to hear the story of the Whiskey Rebellion and how they create different whiskeys by the wisdom of the crowd, you should check it out. They just last week announced that they were taking a new space right across from their distillery in the Strip District. So, Meredith has used this methodology to agilely evolve her business into a very, very successful experience company, right? So it can be applied to many different things, and I want you guys to understand that. So I always like to start things out with a riddle to sort of make it fun. The world record for this solving this riddle is 8 seconds. It was done last week in one of my classes. Before that, it was 9 seconds. So I'm going to see, because you obviously are the smartest people in the world, if we can actually beat the record, okay? So I'm going to do like the 10-second count the basketball referees do. So if I'm doing this, I'm not just being weird, although I am weird all the time. But that's some counting, okay? So we're going to get ready, set, go. Old fart. Old car. Old Glory. 6, 7. Oh, man, well, we have no chance to get the record. But that's okay. So, the sun. Where are the old things? Under the sun. And so, nothing's new under the sun. Thank you, Aisha. That was awesome, right? So I wanted to start it with this riddle because I want to dispel the myth that was out there for a while that this whole concept of lean startup and agile innovation was new. I'm going to prove to you that it was not new, that it's really something that most of you have known all your life. And if you apply it, it's going to work, okay? So I'm going to start first with Kaizen. Kaizen. Brian, what does Kaizen mean? Ah, man, he can read. That's awesome. Exactly. Finish up.
Rapid, continuous, incremental improvement.
Right. Rapid, continuous, incremental improvement, right? We're going to learn and we're going to improve on a continuous basis, right? That's the concept of Kaizen. Where did the concept of Kaizen get originated? Who's the inventor of Kaizen? Yes, Kwaku. Okay, we have Japan and Toyota. He gave 2 answers. That's good. But it's not 100% true. Taishiona? I don't know that. Yeah. Okay. But they probably used it, so that's a good answer. Anybody else? Okay. So it was in Japan, okay? But it was actually a result of an extension of the Marshall Plan. Do you remember the Marshall Plan in World War II, right? The World War II was devastating, and particularly in Japan, where there were nuclear bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, wiped them out. Firebombing wiped out Tokyo, right? Terrible, terrible things. But out of that came an opportunity, right? There was an opportunity to rebuild the industrial capability of that nation with a white sheet of paper. There was no legacy assets that we had to use to change the way that we approached it. So we could come up with an absolutely new way of doing it, okay? And so it was done by a government entity within the United States. It was called the Civil Communications Section of the Economic and Scientific Government mumbo jumbo, right? Forget that part of it. What's important is we all know the quality revolution, right? ISO 9000, Six Sigma, right? You're all familiar with those terms? Sort of, do you know who was the grandfather of all that? There's an award, like the Oscar, like the Grammy. Anybody know the award? It's an important award, really important award. It's called the Deming Award. And it was Dr. Edwards Deming, who actually led the building of this plan. And they put a video together that was called Kaizen Onyo Yondanke. The literal translation is improvement in 4 steps. Okay? So out of World War II, devastation, the opportunity to approach things in a different way. And the largest scale, most popular, well-known implementation of Kaizen, Kwaku on key, Toyota, TPS, the Toyota production system, okay? So it led to a revolution in the 1950s and the 1960s and the 1970s in manufacturing to a point where actually Japan became the #2 largest economy in the world in the end of the 1980s based upon rebuilding their industry under these principles, right? Now, things have changed a little bit since then, right? We have had the rise of China, the breakup of the Soviet Union, and so it's different now, but Japan's still a powerhouse. But as it developed over those years, other segments of the corporate world and companies started to take a look at it, and it actually, software development in large companies started to adopt it, and there was a thing called the Agile Manifesto that was written in 2001. Now, the whole thing is something that will put you to sleep, so you might want to get it and put it by the bedstand and read it and fall asleep. But there were some really important principles that did come out of it, and these are principles that we use in Agile, okay? The first is individuals and interactions over process and tools. Individuals and interactions over process and tools. That means we get out and we talk to our customer. We understand who they are and what they're doing. We feel the pain of their problem, okay? And we have working software over comprehensive documentation, all right? That means starting with low fidelity prototypes, storyboards, low fidelity wireframes, moving up the scale to getting an alpha prototype, right? Those sorts of things. Ultimately, we get to having a working product, right? But we're always putting the efforts into trying to make the solution work. And then customer collaboration over contract negotiation. We try not to make it us versus them, it's we. It's we work on this together. And then again, in the spirit of Kaizen, rapid continuous incremental improvement is that we respond to change as we learn, rather than following the plan of record over the cliff, right? Really important. And this was actually part of the author's work, Ken Schwaber. How many of you have used the Agile methodology called Scrum? So Ken Schwaber is sort of the author of Scrum. He actually prototyped it at Google, and it was done very, very well there. There's actually some good YouTube videos to go look at that. And Sutherland actually has some connections back to Carnegie Mellon. So they're the people that came up with the Agile Manifesto. And then the startup world started to take notice of this. I think my battery died. There we go. There we go. And so in the 2000s time frame, we started to see the startup world start to adopt some of these principles directly. I always like to talk about it in a question, right? Will the dogs eat the dog food? This is a precursor to the question is, why do most startups fail? So but before we answer that question, do you know what the percentage of startups that fail is? All startups. Does anybody have a sense of the percentage? Aaron? Higher than 99%, right? You'll see different things in different places, but 95% and above for sure, right? It's even worse, right? The National Venture Capital Association, this is all the venture capitalists that come together to do research and share best practices about investing in startups, came out with a report in 2015 or 16, which said, of all the companies that raised Series A capital. Now, Series A is a high bar. It's not the seed capital that most of you, pre-seed capital that most of you are chasing right now. This is, you're making progress, and the smartest minds in the world with lots of money chose to invest in you because you are likely to make it. Okay? That's what a Series A capital investment usually denotes. They said that 75% of all Series A recipients failed to return capital. Just the amount that was put in. Now, that didn't mean they died right away. Some of them are what we call the living dead. You know, they kind of make it along the way, but they didn't get into that hyper-growth mode where they returned a lot of money to their investors, right? So even the best of the best don't make it, right? So we have to put ourselves in position to increase the odds of success. All right, with that in mind, why is it that most startups fail? Product market fit. That's a place that they hope to attain, right? So they don't attain it, but why didn't they attain it? Exactly, they didn't talk to their customers early and often enough, right? So the main concept and tenet behind the lean startup and agile innovation is that you have to get out into the world. You have to be with your customers. You have to understand their problem. Startups exist only to solve customers' problems. The product doesn't matter except it's a manifestation of the value you're delivering to solve their problem. And you can't do that if you don't talk to them. You don't live with them, right? Very, very important. Okay, so this has led to another evolution, which is called product market fit, but it also has a term that we all heard before, which is? What? No! It's not minimal viable product. It's MVP, most valuable player, Ballon d'Or, right? It always has been. We can't just steal their word. So, Sean Ammirati, who's one of our professors here at Carnegie Mellon and a venture capitalist at Birchburg Capital, said, I'm going to come up with a better name for it. He has a great story to tell on how this evolved, but this is what we use here at Carnegie Mellon. We don't want to be just viable. We want to be awesome. So we have MAPs, minimally awesome products, right? And that awesome is because we understand the customer and we're solving a problem in a way that connects with them emotionally, right? So that's really, really important. The customer is queen and king. We have to solve their problems. So we're going to do it not in a viable way, we're going to do it in an awesome way. Make sense? All right, so this has led to sort of what the tenet of the lean startup is that customer development is just as important as product development. So in customer development, we talk about customer discovery, which leads to customer validation, meaning that we understand their problem and that we're going to solve it, and we can build a minimally awesome product to do so, which then becomes customer creation. People start to buy from us, and then company building. We ramp up and we grow. That's the customer development process, which has to marry up in parallel with the product development process. And there are three people that sort of coined the vocabulary. The first is Steve Blank. You'll hear a lot about him in the I-Core program. The second, Eric Ries, who coined the term the lean startup. He has a great book called The Lean Startup. You should read it. It talks about the examples of how different companies did customer discovery and solve problems, and talks about low fidelity prototypes that turned into high fidelity prototypes. So he talked with Drew Houston from Dropbox. That story is awesome. Talked about how a company that wanted to deliver food kits into the home actually spent months in the grocery stores with shoppers to understand how they were building their shopping cart. It's really interesting things, and you'll hear more about it in the business model canvas and in the Agile product development module that Sean Ammirati will talk about. So here's the issue, is when we enter into this startup mode, we have a hypothesis. We're smart people. We think we see a problem, right? But we don't know for sure if it's the problem that the customers are really having. So we go to the customers and we talk to them to try to validate that this is a real problem, right? So we start off with a hypothesis, right? And we live with the customer and we build those incremental, better, low fidelity to high fidelity prototypes in that rapid, continuous, incremental improvement methodology, right? And so we have an unknown problem and an unknown solution to start, and we iterate through to get a known problem and a known solution, also called MVP, MAP, or product market fit, okay? So that is what the lean means, and that's how we approach these problems. Customer development meets agile product development, that's the lean startup, okay? And Eric Ries is going to talk a little bit about it in the video that we show, and he does a really great job of making it come to life. So, back to our riddle. Thank you, Aisha, for solving it, even though you didn't get the world record. Yeah. Next time you will, won't you? But it would be 1 second, won't it? Okay, so there's nothing new under the sun. I took this back to World War II to show you how it evolved. But it really goes back 500 years. And every single one of you learned this in school. It might have been in middle school, might have been in high school. It's different for everybody depending on the methodology of where you went to school. Does anybody know what this really is? The lean startup is, exactly, it's the scientific method applied to business. That's all it is, right? We've got the rapid, continuous, incremental improvement of Kaizen. We got the unknown problem and the unknown solution from the lean startup, because we start with our hypothesis or our theory. We design an experiment that's interacting with our customers. We take the data from that and we synthesize it, and then we decide, are we doing the right thing or are we not? Should we continue forward or should we change? okay? And I called it change because there's another word. I'll let Eric Reese give you a really good joke about it. But I went to school here 30 years ago. I became an entrepreneur right out of Carnegie Mellon. And this was all exactly the same things that I learned when I was here. And it's just different, slightly different vocabulary. Idea, feasibility, verification, demonstration, commercialization. It was a loop, right? And under that riddle I put up that old fart because he is Yoda. Yoda, the grand Jedi master of all things entrepreneurial. His name's Frank Demler. Have any of you got to meet Frank? Okay, it's an experience. He is brilliant, but you got to be careful because we have a saying in Pittsburgh. Is you're not an entrepreneur in Pittsburgh until you've been hit upside the head by a 2 by Frank. All right? I once was not that bad looking. I am now one of the ugliest SOBs in the world because Frank would give me really tough advice. And he was almost always right? Not always, everybody's made mistakes. But these mentors that you seek out, you don't want them to give you the old attaboy, pat you on the back. You want them to give you the straight dirt, right? Because they've been there, they've done that. And that's going to be really, really important in this whole process. So let me talk about those failure modes that we alluded to before. This is really important, right? In my 30 years of experience as an investor and an entrepreneur, I see these three, and they're used in various vocabulary out there, right? The first is the false positive, right? You do a little bit of customer discovery. You talk to your friends. You talk to your family, right? Because they're like you, and they have the same problem that you have. But guess what? After you listen to them, you go on and you build it, and you find out you built something that nobody wants. Why? Why? We call that a convenience sample, right? Because they're convenient to talk to. It may be your fellow students. Why is that a bad idea? Because they're going to lie to you. And they're going to lie to you with the best intentions, right? They want you to feel good about what you're doing. So they're not going to say, that's terrible. They're going to say, oh, that's really cool. Go for it, right? But guess what? The only answer that matters when you're bringing a solution to somebody is, I want to buy that today. Let me get my checkbook out, right? That's the only answer that is definitive, right? You don't want attaboy. You don't want, ooh, that's kind of cool. You want, I want that now. I want to buy it, all right? So the false positive is one of the failure modes. You've got to avoid that. 4 moms talked to 2,500 potential customers before they built their first product. 2,500. How long do you think that took? Half a year? A year? Well, the process is ongoing. In that case, it was a week. They went to a trade show that had 10,000 people flow through the trade show, and they set up a process to engage with as many as they could, and they got to 2,500 of them, right? So there are ways to get to people rather quickly. The second is the signal to noise problem, okay? And this could happen, like 4 moms, if they didn't do a good job of it. They talked to 2,500 people in the course of a week, and they got all these different answers. And so it was noisy, right? And so you have to be able to pull the signal out of the noise. And the way that you do that is you remove bias from the way that you interact with your customers, right? So in that convenience sample, by talking to people that we already know, that's a bias. They're biased in their answer towards you, right? So you need to eliminate those kinds of things. A lot of times, there's bias introduced when you haven't validated the problem and you're already introducing your solution. Because your solution actually gets them thinking differently about their problem rather than understanding their problem distinctly, okay? So that's the second failure mode. And the third one is, hey, you actually did a great job of customer discovery. You validated the problem, right? And you're on the path to building a product, except your product sucks. Your product sucks. It's not good enough. They don't change, okay? And then let's take a little bit deeper look at that. My mentor was a guy named Don Jones. He created this concept called the goodness factor. Goodness meaning value, factor meaning quantified, right? How are we doing on time here? Oh, good, we're in good shape. Don Jones actually created the Don Jones Center for Entrepreneurship that was in the Tepper School. Together, Project Olympus and the Venture Bridge and the Don Jones Center came together to form what is now the Swartz Center. Great man. I learned a lot from him. I actually talked him into starting our first company together while I was still a student here at Carnegie Mellon. It was a great ride. I learned a ton. I say it's like getting a PhD in entrepreneurship. Don came up with this, and he published this thing called the goodness factor. And the goodness factor is this. If you enter a market that has an existing solution and you're at the relatively the same cost or price, right, you have to be 3 times better than the existing solution. 3 times better. And then the other side of that is if you come in with the same benefit or value, you have to be 3 times cheaper. Okay? 3 times better or 3 times cheaper. Why is that? Anybody? Why is it? Yeah. You need to get market share. And how do you get market share? And how do you get initial sales? People change, right? Right? So it's about change. The problem is people don't want to change because they're freaking lazy. Every single one of us is freaking lazy. In a good way, right? We form habits, the great habit force. It allows us to get through the day, right? If we had to analyze every new decision that we faced, our brains would blow up, right? So we form habits. It's like muscle memory. We do the same thing over and over again in the same situation. So if you want to break my habit and get me to change, you need to be compellingly better or compellingly cheaper. So I labored along from 1990 until 2014 when I read these 2 books, which are awesome, by the way. You should read these books if you're a true entrepreneur. 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel's famous for creating PayPal and then invested, first angel investor in Facebook, right? Then he's doing Clarion Capital, amazing guy. This is my friend Ben Horowitz. He's telling you you're number 1, because you are. And Ben is the co-founder of Andreessen Horowitz, the venture capital firm that's very famous now. He was the first product manager in Netscape, the first browser. That's how he met Mark Andreessen, who was the co-founder with Jim Clark of Netscape. By the way, what happened to Netscape? Where'd it go? Anybody? It was the greatest product we'd ever seen in the mid-90s. Where did it go? And where did AOL go? Right? It went to Oracle with Sun, right? It's all part of Oracle now. It's really weird how these things sort of evolve and just kind of go away. But Mozilla, Firefox kind of picked up the mantra that they were trying to do with that Firefox. So I read these 2 books. They're awesome. You should read them. Hard Thing About Hard Things. And these guys said no longer can you just be 3 times better or 3 times cheaper. They said you have to be 10 times better or 10 times cheaper to get people to change their behavior. So what happened? Why did it go from 3 to 10? And why competition? Okay, it's actually the information revolution, right? All of a sudden, we have ubiquitous information. We can innovate more quickly. We apply the lean startup principles. All of a sudden, there are lots of choices. Lots of choices. And so you have to be much better or much cheaper. Now, the 3 or 10 are meant to be illustrative. Every industry, those numbers are different, right? So don't focus in too much on the numbers. It's just compellingly better or compellingly cheaper. Otherwise, you stand no chance. And I actually have a great example, and since we have an audience that's old fogies like me a little bit, that's cool. I can actually give this example because it works. Is in 1998, the pundits that were writing about what was going on in information technology said, the search wars are over. We have the winners. The best search engine in 1998 came right out of Carnegie Mellon. Anybody know what it was called? Lycos. How many of you have been in the Malden Auditorium on floor 1 or 2 over in Newell-Simon, right? That's Fuzzy Malden. He created it, right? The web crawler. That's a cool thing. That's what later search engines would actually be built on top of, right? So you had Lycos, which was number 1, obviously. I'm not biased, am I? There was Alta Vista. There was Excite at Home. Even that Yahoo thing had a lame version of a search engine, right? And everybody was using them, and everybody was happy until what happened in 1998? Man, stand up. What's it say right there on his shirt? Google happened, right? Now, there are people in the room now that I know were using search engines in 1998. Do you remember that first experience using Google? It was like, wow, aha, this is so much better. The information is better organized. It's more on point for what I was searching from, right? And we know what happened after that. Does anybody know where Lycos is, or Alta Vista, or Excite at Home? You hear about them anymore? Don't exist. They obliterated them because they were 10 times or more better. Okay, now we're going to fast forward to 2019. There is research that's out there that proves Bing is better than Google. Bing is better than Google. How many of you use Bing? Okay, these are Microsoft employees, everybody, right? Or the computer that you bought, that was the default browser and you're too lazy to change, right? Nobody uses Bing. Like, nobody that's smart. Oh, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm having... Why is that? If Bing is provably better than Google, why doesn't everybody use Bing? It's only a tiny bit, incrementally better. It's not 10 times better or 10 times cheaper. So people aren't going to change. Just aren't going to do it. That's a fact of life, right? So you have to figure out how to be 10 times better or 10 times cheaper. That's imperative. Once you understand that there's a real problem that people are willing to pay you immediately to solve, you've got to come up with something that's compellingly better or compellingly cheaper than their other choices. Otherwise, you die. All right? Okay, so I'm going to make the argument that when we talk about benefits and value, that there are only 3 that exist in the world. That's it. I'm going to make the argument, bear with me, and then I'll let you argue with me if I'm wrong, okay? So what are the 3 benefits that exist in the world? Aaron?
Save money.
Save time, or save or make money. Right? Save time or save or make money. All right. That's a good hint to what maybe the third one is. All right. I call this the Zuckerberg benefit, right? How many of you saw the Social Network movie, right? You know the story, right? Mark Zuckerberg is a nerdy Harvard sophomore. He can't get a date. So he steals the idea from the Winklevi, and he creates Facebook to get a date, to meet women, right? Now get your heads out of the gutter, right? That's one type of a connection that Aaron said, right? A romantic connection. But getting a customer is good. Hiring an employee is good. Getting an investor is good. Those are connections, right? We call it the hook you up benefit. Okay? This isn't about swiping left or right. This is about making connections that matter. Okay? All right, so I've made the argument. There are 3 benefits that exist in the world. 3, that's it. No more. Who wants to argue? All right, well, no one's raising their hand because they're afraid that I'll shout you down. I might not be right, but I can yell loud, right? People say, well, isn't fame or recognition, isn't that a benefit? Well, most people I know that seek fame are either looking to get hooked up or to make money, right? So you can break it down into those. And the same thing with the altruism and doing good. I want to do things. Well, I say that, I don't know anybody that was altruistic that wasn't trying to meet somebody or create an advantage for themselves to make money or save money, that their thing, right? So the point is, there aren't just 3 benefits, right? There are many benefits in the world, but other than these 3, every other one's so complex, and they mean different things to different people, right? So when I talk about fame, we all have in our mind some level of fame that matters, and it's different. So when you're talking to somebody who's never talked to you before, you're not connected on the same level. But time is the great equalizer. Everybody knows exactly what time is. Everybody knows exactly what the value of money is, right? And people understand that getting connections, romantic or customers or investors, they understand those things equally. There's no mismatch, right? So as an entrepreneur, when you're communicating what it is, the value you provide, break it down first into these fundamental building blocks of value. And then you can build up, based on their situation, into more complex benefits based upon their situation, not yours, theirs, right? So think about this as you're trying to communicate what the benefits are. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm introducing tomorrow's talk from Will Kegler there in the back, the Business Model Canvas. It's a great tool. It's sort of the next step in the sort of philosophy of approaching startups. But I'm going to jump out right now and actually play a video from Eric Ries, the person who coined the lean startup, because he has some great stories about how this all worked and how he learned his lessons and applied them. His book called The Lean Startup is an excellent book. It's an easy read. I suggest that if you're serious about being an entrepreneur, that you go ahead and do that. Oops. It's 1:30 now, so I understand if people have to get up and go to class or things of that nature. But if you have any questions at all, we can hang out and talk about it. The approach here is this lean, agile, continuous, rapid incremental improvement. That's how we address the startup issues. It's an approach. It can be modified to your own situation, and we understand that. The EIRs are here to help you. You'll see another tool that's really good. Tomorrow, Will Kegler will talk about the Business Model Canvas. I hit the wrong one. Oh, well. How about that? I had a different presentation up, but these are actually pretty cool people. So if you need to go, you can get up and go right now. If you have any questions at all, I'll hang around and answer those questions.